Hey, everybody. It's Jeremy from Jeremy.net. I'm a comic book artist, writer, creator, self publisher, and I share my creative process here with you online. If you enjoy these live streams, would like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, you can become a Patreon subscriber for as little as $2 a month. Head on over to patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you like to get a free digital sketchbook, work in progress, animated GIFs, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at substack.com/@Jeremy. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comic books, or if you read digitally on Kindle, you can go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to my Amazon author page. You can pick up my books there. So, as you guys know, I'm all about sharing the ugly side of the creative process. So, prepare for a hot mess. Normally, when I'm trying out something new, I like to pre-test it, test the setup, test how the cameras are working and everything, make sure that's all going to run smoothly when I go live. Today, all I'm going to do is I'm working on thumbnails for, and actually hopefully plan to get started on the actual drawing for a physical piece of fan art. I'm trying to get a jump on WonderCon in March. I'm going to try and get a bunch of physical pieces to sell, because I usually don't sell any physical pieces. Mostly it's just prints and comics. But I'm going to try and get some pieces done ahead of time for the show, because I find it very hard to do commissions at the table. I see my boy Jim Lujan in the chat. Jim says, well. We find ourselves together once again, Mr. Bond. Well, do you expect me to talk, Jim? Oh, excuse me. Sorry. This is the, other than saying good morning to my wife, this is the first conversation. These are the first words I'm speaking for the day. So I've still got a bit of a frog in my mouth. Anyway, so I've got a setup that I'm trying that is new. And I am prepared for the fact that anytime I try something new, there's bumps in the road. So I have a drawing board with a camera and extra lights strapped to it. So let's see here. All right. Oh yeah, this isn't unattractive at all. Let's see here. So let's get the lights on. And this is absolutely not as cozy as I thought it would. Well, it's a little too cozy. I got to see if I can bring this in a little bit more, just because it's too much right under my chin, and I need it just a little bit closer, so I've got some breathing space to draw. The original thought behind this was to use the easel that I have and then work around it. But I also found that when I was drawing and facing the easel, my neck started to get sore, because I actually had to turn to look at you guys at the camera. So I thought, let's try this out in a setup where I'm facing you guys a little bit more, or facing the camera, so I can see the the chat while I'm drawing. I see Herman's in here. He says, "Ha, got y'all in check. What's good, Jeremy and peeps? Hope all is well." Well, we're about to find out. honestly, I'm at kind of a turning point here because I'm about to dive into this. And part of me is thinking I should break out the easel and just put this entire mounted setup on the easel. Because the nice thing about the way I have this set up is this camera that's right underneath my head is attached to the board. So in the small photo, you can see me moving the board around, but the camera is staying in a fixed position. So I can sit this against anything else if I want or need to. Well, you know what? Even if it's a hot mess disaster, that's the point. We have sometimes doing and making art means trying stuff, knowing full well that it could be a disaster and kind of going forward anyway. So I'm just going to tweak the camera and get it a little bit closer so I'm not like choking on it. And then we'll get started here. In fact, I need to angle these lights down a little bit more so they're not just above the board, but actually facing the surface. Let's angle these lights a little bit more. I see Red in the chat. How are you, Red? All right. So I was thinking, I kind of want to just do what I'd like to do when I show up at WonderCon this year is have sort of a greatest hits of just drawing fan art, because I don't draw much fan art, not because I have an objection to the idea of fan art. It is simply the fact that more often than not, I have my own ideas that I'm working on, and I'm more interested in drawing those things than I am drawing other people's. But I thought, let's start with something like, whoa, hang on my screen, I just made a weird click. And, okay, all right. I tried to go to like half screen. Let's see. Herman says, oh, cool. It has the Requiem of a Dream camera shot where Marlon Wayans is running down the street, the camera with his face. It was so weird. I want to say originally that was a Spike Lee shot. Because Spike Lee always has that thing where he's got like the tracking, the camera that's like mounted on a dolly, and he's just dragging the actor through the streets. So it's kind of a reverse of it. It's in that same vein. Anyway, I was thinking, what are some characters that I like draw? I'm just saying, what are the comic book characters that I like? And I'm like, if I were going to do fan art, who would I draw? And I tend to like drawing female figures. So I thought, well, my first love in superhero comics was really kind of the X-Men. So why not start with Storm? Now, see, the interesting thing about that, Storm, I think, is a great choice. I have actually not drawn Storm very often. So I thought before diving into, so here is I'm going to show you what the game plan is. And then we're going to start just working towards it. If I can find the little, all right. So you'll have to pardon how all over the place I am with this, because this was me so not pre-planning things out and just diving in. But my plan, if you'll excuse the frog in my throat. So this is a little poly bag for original artwork. So it's just a hard-backed surface, and on the inside is just a mat. So it's not a framed piece. It's just a mat with a back, and the artwork's going to go in there. Kind of like the pieces that I have behind me and the camera on the wall. They're matted in this same way. It's just that all of this is inside of a frame instead of just inside of a plastic sleeve. And then next to me, I just have a sheet of, well, a pad of, whoa, my books are making a dive here. Stuff is all over the place. Artwork falling out of the sky. Oh no. Maybe I'll put these down there. I'll have less distance to fall. Anyway, I've just got a pad of Strathmore mixed media paper, vellum surface. So it is pretty much it's pretty much just Bristol board, like the same Strathmore Bristol board that you would normally buy. I am sure there's probably a slight difference in the finish between the mixed media and the normal where it just says Bristol board. I think the only difference really is maybe it's got a little bit more of a tooth, so you can use, not that you can't use watercolor on Bristol as well, but my plan is simply draw a piece that will fit in one of these sheets, and then the sheet goes inside of the mat, and that'll be an original piece that I will sell. So, but instead of just starting sketching on this board from the get-go, I am a thumbnail guy. I like to work out the thumbnails before I start. That's just how I've always worked, because I make so many different changes and revisions. I think about things that, in the same way that I'm starting a sentence and stopping it, when I draw, I go through a lot of revisions in the process and just try to work my way towards a good drawing. It's not like I put down the pen and everything or the pencil and everything that comes out is genius. No, I don't think anything that I make is genius. But even the good drawings, I'm a thumbnail guy. It takes me multiple passes before I get something I'm happy with. So this session may just be all thumbnails, but hopefully I'll get to the point where I can start working on the finished piece first. So Herman also said, this is just a sketch day, or are you working on something particular? So yeah, what I was saying when I started is that at WonderCon is probably the only convention I'm doing this year. And I almost never do commissions because of basically what I'm talking about here, my process of working through thumbnails and taking all the time I spend working out, trying to get things just right. I know I'm a perfectionist. I know that it's bad. But it means that I can't really give the people that are just walking by any real attention. And, selling the books, selling the prints, it requires being up and being engaged, standing up, talking to people. And it's impossible to get anything that I think is decent done during a convention. And I say, the people who actually commission the piece may be very, very happy with it. But in my mind, it's really hard for me to sell somebody a piece, even if they're very happy with it, if in my mind I'm all, this could have been better, this could have been better, this was wrong, this was wonky. So I thought, start working on some pieces for the show and just bring, even if it's only like 10 new pieces, just bring some sketches, some original art, penciled and inked, ready to sell. So that is the mission. And I think I'm going to do that for I may do that for the rest of the streams for like the next couple of months until we get to WonderCon. Simply because I was sitting down and I had all these other things that I was going to work on. Some are going to be educational. Some are going to be finishing other pieces. I still haven't finished that laundry dryer piece that I've been working on. That's still not done. But I thought this has a hard deadline. However many pieces I'm going to have when WonderCon rolls around is however many pieces I'm going to have. So I'm like, let's just get started. Let's dive in. So that is to the answer of working on something particular. And yes, mixed media paper. You can do anything on that. And yeah, use any medium, watercolor, inks, or wash. Yeah, I mean, it says on it, acid-free, heavyweight for finished artwork, wet and dry media. So yeah, it's acceptable for watercolor, pastel, pencil, ink. It will take all of those mediums pretty well. And I mentioned that it's like Bristol board, and the finish pretty much is the same as Bristol board. It's a pretty thick paper, so if you work on watercolor, you have to get it super wet before it really buckles. Like, it may warp a little bit, but it should dry fairly smooth. So yeah, this is a nice heavy duty paper. The only thing in terms of comparing this to Bristol board, I expected to look at it closely and for it to have more tooth than Bristol board. But first off, you can get rough Bristol board or smooth Bristol board. This feels pretty smooth. It's a pretty smooth finish. You don't need to go out and especially get smooth Bristol board. Mixed media pads. First off, these pads are not that expensive. This thing is like 15 sheets, and I want to say that it's less than $10, or right around $10 at Michael's. So whatever your local art supply store is, the price for a pad of this, it's pretty reasonable. This is a 6x8. So obviously, if you're working bigger, bigger pads gonna cost more. But for this, it's pretty affordable. And I think you can get pads that are also come with more sheets, like maybe 30 or 50. So if you're going to be doing a lot, I think it's very, very reasonably priced. It's economical. So I had pulled up ahead of time. I had pulled up a couple of. I'm looking specifically at Dave Cockrum era Storm. So I just grabbed 2 images. One. I was like, what are the earliest images of this classic version of Storm? So obviously there's the Giant X-Men #1. And then I looked at the next couple of issues of Uncanny X-Men after that. And I found another pose of hers that I liked. This is X-Men 103. So these are all from the late, great Dave Cockrum. So I'm not going to draw an exact recreation of this pose, but I'm using these as a starting point. In fact, I really do I think this is a great pose. And I think what I might do is try to do this, but angled so that she's facing the viewer. So you're getting the view that Black Tom and the Juggernaut are getting. So just going to have that over here on the side as reference. So let's see here. Hang on a second. So Herman says, I say work on a series of thumbnails, like 50, and apply a character to one of those so you have a head start. And you can finish a piece. If people want your character or fan art, that's a really good point. I could do a series of thumbnails and just. They say that an artist should have some stock poses, not necessarily that your comic book work should be stock poses, but if you do commissions or conventions, to maybe have 5 or 10 really good poses, angles that you can draw really well with just the basic structure. And then you can make a male figure out of this, a female figure out of this. You can make it, Superman or Batman. You can make it Wonder Woman or Storm. And just have those as stock, ready to go whenever you need them. I never have done that, and I should. I honestly think that there's, it's good to learn from. It's a good way. It's a good methodology to have. So, yeah, it's just one of those that, and I'm like, just go ahead and. But my point is that now that you put that in my head, I almost feel like I want to do a bunch of thumbnails until I get my 10 stock poses and then just work through that with different characters. But maybe that's sort of what I'll do in this process of working these out. In fact, I don't care if there's a skull on here or a drawing already. Herman says, I'm a thumbnail dude. He says, I stay in thumbnail. I know I'm kind of the same way. I realize I'm getting worse and worse at producing finished pieces because I get so wrapped up in the thumbnail process. I need to push forward with finished art more often. Dylan says, sorry for being a little late. No problem, Dylan. It's always the replay. And, it's like office hours. People are welcome to come and go as they need to. Just hang out. See, Herman says, oh, wow, Dave Cockrum passed? I have to Google that. I thought that he passed away, I want to say, 7 or 8 years ago. I remember that there was a tribute book that was, I don't know if it was being funded on Kickstarter, but, just friends or family, I think, were putting together a book for him. First, there was something to raise money for him when his health was failing, just to try and raise some medical bills. Because, he was another one of those artists who has that sad story of contributing so much to the medium of comics, But then when the time came that, he's older and ill, there's no retirement plan for comic creators, unfortunately. And, he was in a position of not having health care. And I remember Hugh Jackman, like at, I think the premiere for the X-Men movie, wanted him to stand up and take a bow, because he was saying like he would not have a career if it was not for Dave Cockrum. So he was very, very appreciative of the work that Dave Cockrum has done. But I couldn't tell you exactly when it is that Cockrum passed away. But I should know that since I'm basing this off of his work. And that's something that I want to try. I don't know if I'll be able to stick to it 100%, but there's something I want to do in terms of doing fan art, specifically to make sure that I'm doing it as like with the tone of doing work of artists who are no longer living, and trying to also make sure I'm giving credit just in terms of saying this is the person who inspired this piece. So the Storm ones, I may do other Storm pieces. Like I can't remember who the artist was for her punk phase. I'm sure there's someone who is still living, so I would be, that's more in the I'm biting off of somebody's style as opposed to homage. But in fact, let me put a little note here. After Cockrum. I wonder, does this zoom at all? No, the only way to get a physical zoom. The weird thing about this camera is I'm using sort of it's sort of like a fake GoPro. And it the zoom works, but not when it's in the mode when it's attached to a desktop computer. Only when you're just kind of using it battery powered with an SD card. Let's see here. Dylan says, "Are you drawing Storm?" Yes, I am. And Herman says, "My favorite is Sal Buscema, brother to what? My cat's freaking out there. Let's see. I know John Buscema. I didn't know there was an Al Buscema as well. So there's 3 of them." But anyway, yeah. So he says Sal Buscema, and he says, "I love the old school Hulk, man. Can't get no better than that." And John Byrne, which funny enough, Jim jumps right in and says, "Just wondering, are you a Byrne victim? Huge fan as well as I am." Yes, very much. Love me some John Byrne. In fact, John Byrne was the first creator that got me reading newsstand. John Byrne was the creator that got me to move from the newsstand to seeking out a comic book shop, because I started reading. For most people, John Byrne, it's either X-Men or Fantastic Four. For me, it was West Coast Avengers, the Vision Quest run in the late 80s, like right beginning of the 90s, was when that storyline began. And it's kind of a lot of the stuff that they touched on the WandaVision TV series. But I started reading John Byrne's run then, and my newsstand, like most newsstands, you get one issue and then you go back the next month hoping to get the next one. And sometimes they have it, sometimes they don't. Sometimes it sells out. And if you didn't get it, then you can't find the next one. So then I started thinking there's got to be a way to get the other issues. I talked to some kids at my school, and they said, "Oh yeah, there's a comic book shop in the downtown area, with like little shopping district that's behind, like by near the local library." So hopped on my bike, rode a few miles out of the way, had never gone over there before, and it's like it opened me up to a whole new magical wonderland, and it was all over from there. Let's see here. So yes, huge burn victim. While I'm doing this, let me bring the camera in a little tighter, because the whole point of thumbnails is that they are small, but I think it will make it better for you guys if you can see a little bit closer. So I'm going to tweak the camera angle a little bit more and try to get this so you guys are getting a closer view. You know what? That's not making it any closer. Yeah, I think that this is just going to be as close as it's going to get. Again, this is another one of those. Yeah, I should have left it the way I had it because it was kind of just right. This is one of those where if I had put this on the easel, you would have a better shot at seeing. Oh, wait. I can slide this down like this. There we go. Yeah, it helps if I know how to use my tools. That's a little bit better. All right. So now, where are we at? Yeah, Herman says, right, Marvel didn't help with expenses. Got it, man. Probably countless hours doing art for them. Yeah, I mean, it's been a conversation just in terms of like indie comic creation, that you want to create something that you own specifically because you've got, the corporate overlords are under no obligation to, provide you insurance, make sure that you're going to have some well-being in case you have any health issues or just as you get older. There's no retirement. I mean, honestly, for a lot of employees of any job these days, there's not, there's no safeguards. There's no retirement plan. There's no, there's no way to make sure. There's no job security. That's the word I'm looking for. My vocabulary does kind of. Thumbnailing is one of the few things in which my eloquence then falls off, because it's one thing to just talk while I'm working on just fixing figure problems or coloring something, but trying to think and speak while actually composing, like trying to work on compositional issues, that is much harder. But yeah, there's no job security. Job security is becoming more and more of an illusion in all industries, but there was never any job security in comics. Mind you, this is spoken from somebody who has never worked full-time at mainstream comics, but I've just observed the industry and just how it has changed over years, and the stories that I've heard from pros. Maybe it'd be nice if I get a little foreshortening and have this knee coming right out at the viewer. If I've got this knee coming right out, maybe I've got this hand coming up, and maybe this hand I've got coming towards the viewer. I think that's a pretty good pose. Let's see here. Staying on top of the chat. Dylan says, I finally started to read Art and Fear 3 days ago. I've been reading a couple of pages in the morning, trying to stay off my phone. I'm on chapter 2, page 11. Well, good. I'm glad you're making progress with it. I read it years ago now. I want to say 5 or 6 years ago, but I think that it's a book worth revisiting. A lot of books about the philosophy and motivations behind the creative process and trying to, connect that desire to both be creative and, have some sense of a sustainable lifestyle. A lot of those things are lessons that you read it once and it's not like you have the lessons mastered. It's like you read it once and you're like, oh, okay, that's a good idea. I should do that stuff. And then you never do it. In the same way as, looking at art books and you kind of look through it once, and you're like, oh, I feel like now I know this information. Now I know how to be a better artist. But if you never actually put the information into practice, then you haven't really learned anything. You've just looked at somebody else's cheat sheet or their explanation of how to do things. And I think books like Art and Fear definitely fall into that category of you probably need multiple reads. At least I know that I do. I can't speak for other people, but for myself, I definitely can use more. So I don't know. This is the interesting thing. How small this drawing is. I mean, you can see my hand, my big ass hand. So you get a sense of how small this drawing is. Part of me wants to make the drawing bigger so you guys can see what I'm doing. But also I want you to understand that this is how big I thumbnail. Because when you're drawing this small, everything just turns into very simple compositional shapes. This is the place where you figure out whether a drawing works or not. Because if you can make your image readable in this tiny little format, which is honestly, when people are scrolling on their phones, this is how big of a thumbnail someone will see on their phone anyway. If you can make it read in this tiny little context, then it'll work. It'll read when you do it larger. In fact, comparing this, I mean, I know I put my hand in there for comparison, but if I bring my phone here with the reference, you can see how much bigger my phone is. And this isn't like an iPhone Plus or anything, it's just the regular size one. You can see how much bigger my phone is than my thumbnail. I mean, it really is just a tiny drawing. In fact, they call them thumbnails. It's maybe, if you look at my thumb, it's maybe, well, I can't really do it from the angle I have this set up, but if I put it like here, it's maybe twice the size of my thumb. So, I mean, twice as tall. So if you were to go 4 up from the size of your actual thumbnail, that's how big I'm drawing. It's a tiny ass little sketch, tiny diagram. Let's see here. Dylan mentioned Storm is my favorite superhero. Well, I didn't know that when I sat down, when I picked her for this session, but I'm happy to hear it. And Odd Dude 21, sorry it took me so long to get down to the comments. The downside of drawing and talking at the same time. But welcome, good to see you again. Thanks for joining. And Herman says, we were talking about John Buscema. He was mixing, he said he was mixing with Al Milgrom, which, interesting. Al Milgrom, I thought that he was mostly an inker. Maybe he also did pencils as well. I may be misremembering. I mean, obviously, if we're talking about Al Milgrom, then you and I are of the same age range, because he's one of those guys that you don't hear people like post-Image era talking about Al Milgrom. He's a guy very specifically like late 80s, early 90s pre-Image. That's when I think of Al Milgrom. There's people who are in the range of like late 40s, early 50s, you know, maybe late 60s. That's the folks that are talking about Al Milgrom. So I definitely, I feel you there, man. Let's see here. Oh, Jim mentions Iron Fist was so good with Byrne. I have never read his Iron Fist. In fact, I've never read an Iron Fist comic in my life. But there's actually, what's funny is, even though I love Byrne, I've read Fantastic Four Byrne, I've read X-Men Byrne. You know, there's the, as I mentioned, the West Coast Avengers Byrne. But there is so much of his work I still have not read yet. I know he did a run where he was doing Kirby's Fourth World, doing his version of it. And I think it only recently has been collected. But that's on my list of stuff to read. I'm a fan of Star Trek, the original series, but I've never really been a fan of Star Trek comic books. And I know that he's done a lot of Star Trek comics. Next Men. I think maybe because I started reading comics like prior to the Image boom, which led a lot of other guys, like, you know, Image did their thing. Then you had guys like you had the Legend comics where Frank Miller and Mignola starting Hellboy and Byrne doing Next Men. You know, that's the era that I was growing up in. So I remember that work from then, from that era. But yeah, there's a ton of, I'm sure there's a ton of stuff that Byrne's done that I've never read. In fact, I mean, I know I have read some Byrne Alpha Flight, but I think it was more like a couple of issues here and there. I've never gone through and read his whole actual run. Let's see here. Storm's got the hot pants on. Let's see here. Cape coming down the front. So now I'm just going in and just locking down what are the physical details. I know there were more comments. I got distracted by actually getting back in here and continuing to draw, but I will come back to the comments again in a second. It's like I come in, put a couple lines in. And I'm also wondering if just because it's Storm, whether I should completely obliterate everything on this side of the image other than her arm and just have like the lightning coming out. And this is one of those where I could do multiple versions. You know what? I almost feel like I should leave the lightning off only because it's going to make it really hard to connect. It'll complicate the composition in ways that I don't have a good solution for. Let's see here. Herman says, another one I like is George Perez. Says that dude is amazing. He draws everything. I wish I had that dedication. You know what? I mean, yeah, I wish I did too. He's one of those guys he's a master of the medium. You know, was able to draw multi-character books with incredible level of detail, and you never felt like he was trying to cheat on the detail or taking shortcuts. He was not using Wallywood's 22 panels that always work, or if he did, he was using like 4 of those techniques in each panel. Yeah, another great legend to learn from in the comics medium. Let's see here. Dylan says tape a magnifying glass to the camera. You know what? It's not so much that because I can move now that I realized I can slide the I remembered that I can slide this down. I can move the camera even closer to this, but I think I didn't expect to get a thumbnail that I was happy with this quickly. So I think I'm actually ready to move to an actual, illustration now. And I am gonna take this this matte board. I'm going to use this to actually draw my framing. So I'm going to let's flip this over. Damn it. My drafting tape is, I'm staring right at it, but I have this lap board in my lap, so I cannot get up and get to it. So I think what I'm going to try and do is just fake it till I make it, which, see, this is the thing. Now that I'm doing this, I'm too close. But if I sit this down on the table, then you can kind of get a sense of what I'm doing, which is trying to position this dead center. And I'm only doing this so I can very lightly block in where the drawing is going to be placed. Now, luckily, my my drafting tape may be across the room, but I've got a plain old piece of Scotch tape, which hopefully will not ruin the surface, and I can just tack this down enough that I can, just tacking it down. Wow, this really is close now. All right. Let's pull this up a tiny bit, just a hair, up a tiny bit, and back a tiny bit. And then face down a tiny bit. If that's enough, because I'm going to move this back up into position. Anyway, just tacking this to the surface so that I can flip it over and now use the matte opening to draw my my rough composition in here. So very lightly, I don't know if you can even see that, very lightly penciled in frame for composing, because I actually want the frame to not be visible. When I finish this, I'm going to draw an actual like ink border, but I'm going to draw that ink border a little bit outside of where the frame that I just drew is, so that the frame will be hidden by the mat. But now, space-wise, this is just right. I've got enough room for the drawing. I've got enough room for my thumbnail. I've got enough room for my reference up here. So I kind of got all this going. Now the thing, this is what's interesting to me. So I mentioned this whole setup is kind of a hot mess in terms of the awkwardness of it. If I had all of this set up on my easel, so it's mostly upright, I mean, I'd have to have my phone sitting on a lip of the easel. I would have to have the sketchbook clamped to the top of the drawing board, which I do have some binder clips, and I actually should take one of these and let's do this because I don't want to move this too far over. Let me see if I can clip this in a spot where it's in a position but not making things difficult for me. Well, now that's sort of too low and too out of the way. You know what? Let's leave it be and keep going. By the way, let me run back to the chat here and see what's going on. I think what I need to do really is design something that will sit on this drafting board that I can clamp to it, but that will hold an additional set of art supplies that I normally would not have attached to it. Yeah, I think I'm going to need that. Let's see here. And hey, James is in the chat. Good to see you, James. Thanks for stopping by. Herman says, I keep my my Bible, How to Draw the Marvel Way, nice and cozy. Very helpful. Yeah, see, that book is a classic, and it is so powerful in terms of studying the fundamentals. Like, I feel like you can always go back and reread it and learn more. I personally don't feel that there's any point at which you're finished with the fundamentals. I think that you may get to such a level of mastery that you just start experimenting. But I think very few artists actually reach that level. I think there seems to be so many in the world because the percentage of people in the world that make art, you know, even with that being a small percentage, I'd say that there's still a tremendous number of artists out there. But I know for me, I feel like I never stop working on just getting better at just the basics of composition and volume, light and tone, proportion, all those. James says, I'm thinking of musicians and how they sometimes express themselves in a personal way. I believe Eye of the Gods was personal for you, right? Yes, you're very correct. He said, I'm wondering how you go about something like that, especially when there are parts of your life that very few people know about. Maybe I'm confusing personal and private, but in any case, should you be concerned about how you will be perceived when you're open to strangers? That is a powerful question. I think that my first instinct is to say that when it comes to producing artwork, your first concern should be doing something that is true. And when I say true, I don't mean autobiographical. I don't mean that you interviewed people, make sure your facts line up and that their memory is what really happened or what really happened. I mean emotional truth, meaning that a story that expresses an emotion or a feeling that you feel is authentic. That kind of true. It doesn't matter where it has aliens and dragons, takes place in alternate dimensions. The factual or fictional part of it is sort of the armor that the soul is dressed in. So when it comes to doing that, the first question is, are you doing something that speaks to something that happened to you? Eye of the Gods, for me, it did speak to an emotional truth of difficulties that I had in relationships in the past about trust. And I think that book is really about that more than anything else. But once you really have that story laid out, I'd say that sometimes you can just sit and worry about all of the protecting yourself later and just make the story. But if you're generally concerned about how much you're sharing and opening up, then maybe it's a matter of, once your script is done, before you even get into the drawing, to sit down with the story, have a time to meditate on it and think about, is this something that are there things that you feel uncomfortable sharing with the world? And if there are, it doesn't mean that you have to scrap the story. It means that you maybe change details. Like, I definitely don't think that unless you have their permission, I don't think it's healthy to use friends and family members and people, I don't think it's a good idea legally to use real names unless you've cleared it with the people that you are telling the story about. But fictionalizing people, coming up with fake names, and taking somebody who maybe was a relative and then just making them a family friend in the story, or taking a family friend and making it an uncle or a cousin, changing someone's career, changing elements just enough that the people who they are based on would not necessarily see themselves, or you couldn't just say a one-to-one, this is obviously me. I think that when it comes to that, but that's just talking about protecting yourself legally. You're also mentioning opening yourself up to strangers and just how the audience is going to react to that story. And that is a very, very personal choice. That is not something that I think the fact that you're asking that question means you're aware of the potential of being judged for whatever the story is. And no one can tell you what your boundaries should or should not be but you. Some people can tell something that's very, very vulnerable and deep and personal, and they don't give a flying fuck what people think, and they're going to put it out there. Some people may put out something that's not even that controversial, but just telling a personal story of their life, and then a bunch of internet trolls will pile on and jump on and make really nasty comments and make them feel bad about what they've done. And it can be horribly destroying to that person, depending on your level of sensitivity. So it's a matter of knowing yourself, knowing what level of comfort you feel with what you're doing, and then also how strongly you want that message to get out there. So those are the criteria by which I think you should evaluate opening yourself up to strangers. But the question of should you open yourself up to strangers or not, that is a personal, extremely personal, private choice. And I think it's something that also, when you have the story, maybe when it's in script form, talking to other people in your life and saying, what do you think about this? And I would say probably you're bringing it up with another creator, me. And I like to think that this is a safe space for us to talk about our ideas and our feelings. I think it also is a matter of how controversial the topic is. But I mean, for instance, I think of Zoe Thorogood and It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth. That is an extremely vulnerable, fantastical autobio. It's both fantastic, it's a great book, but also it's a very fantasy-oriented book about depression, trauma, suicidal ideation. It is a very deep, very great, and very personal work. And honestly, I think that it's a book that, just by virtue of her being so vulnerable and putting that out there, I hope that the work actually saves lives by people reading that content and realizing that they're not alone, that there's other people that are going through the issues and struggling with the same issues that they might be feeling. So sometimes being vulnerable about things that are challenging in your personal private life can help others. And that alone to me is a good reason to do it. But all right, that's a long answer, and there's still a lot of comments to catch up on. And like most streams, I get caught up in the talking. I think we might be in the Q&A section of this, where I put down the pencil and just go through the comments. Let's see how long it takes me to get caught up with the rest of the comments. And maybe I'll draw a little bit more after that. James mentions, I've always liked Al Milgram's inks. Yes, beautiful, beautiful work. Yeah, Herman says, Milgram was amazing. Yeah, I'm old, dust old. You and me both, bruh. You and me both. Dylan says, I'm working on an idea, and here and there I'm starting to think about names. So far, I have robots and kaijus. How would you name robots and kaijus? Let's see. For the robots, I could go to the Jaeger route from Pacific Rim, or go the classic robot name like T9000 or something completely different. Before I answer this, I noticed Herman says, "I see you taking your time, G, with these thumbnails." Yeah, again, talking while drawing, getting caught up in it. That's how it goes. We get caught up in the deep conversations, and at a certain point, it's hard for me to draw while talking. But that's a sign of you guys asking thoughtful questions that really are making me put down my pencil and think about it. I can draw a little bit while talking about the robots and kaiju thing. The art of naming is a whole art unto itself. So in the idea of what to name your characters, whether they're robots or kaijus, and how to go about it, I think that you should experiment. You should just create lists of names and just brainstorm. And maybe you should make columns. And you could say, you know what? I'm going to name all of my robots after Greek mythological figures, and just say the Zeus 57K or the Athena 29. And just you can name some after cities. You've got, or states. You've got the Alabama Mark III, or the Nebraska 12, and or name them after cats or animals, like almost like the way that cars have all kinds of different naming schemes. Some people name cars after animals, some name them after mountain ranges. Just experiment and see what feels right for your story. Naming is another one of those things that is extremely personal. So my advice to you is to experiment with naming. Make a list of different. I would say maybe 10 would be too many because it's kind of overkill. You'll end up spending forever just working on naming conventions. But maybe make a list of 5 different types of naming conventions. Say maybe, again, mythology, locations, elements. You can name them after elements. You've got the xenon, the carbon, trying to think of other elements. The beryllium. Point being is make a list of possible naming schemes. And then under each, like let's say you've got a list of like 5 different possible naming schemes. And then just start trying to brainstorm maybe like 5 names under each naming scheme. And then how do those make you feel? Because in the end, this is about your emotions as the creator and what resonates with you. And from there, you kind of massage it. So that would be my recommendation for naming schemes for your robots. And I would do the same thing with the kaijus as well. Let's see here. Red asks, did you ever paint before? Yes, I was a fine art major when I was in my undergrad college studies. I mostly painted I've never done oils. I painted in acrylic. I've done watercolor before, but acrylic tends to be my go-to medium. I don't know if you have a follow-up question on that. But yeah, I don't have any paintings to show presently. I mean, I've got like a pen and ink drawing with watercolor on the wall behind me. But I don't have any of my traditional acrylic paints in my studio currently. It isn't something I've done in a while, but I miss it and I want to get back to it. So if you've got follow-up questions about painting, let me know. Feel free. Meanwhile, Jim says, I need my weekly Jeremy question fix. Here it is. Do you find it's hard to step away from your project when you're in the zone to live life? Yes, I absolutely find it very, very hard. I would say that the lack of productivity that I have experienced over the past year or two has been part of me actively making time and giving myself permission to just spend time with my wife and say, hey, we're just gonna, we're gonna go for hikes. We're gonna go out for dinner more often. We're gonna, just, spend time playing with our cats. Giving myself permission to not burn out. That's the thing. I'm trying to fight burnout because I think you can be experiencing the symptoms of burnout even before you're on the cusp. And I would say that over the past 4 or 5 years, I've been on the cusp of burnout and just not hitting it. And I've been trying, instead of pushing all the way to the limit and getting to the point where I'm like, okay, I just need to shut down. I've been trying to be more thoughtful and mindful about the amount of time that I spend, doing creative work and, watching more movies, and reading more books. That's the main thing. I'm trying to spend more time reading more books because books were my first love. And that's why I loved comics, because I always loved drawing. I love reading fiction, nonfiction, just everything. I love reading in general. And books are the combination of both. So yes, to answer your question, Jim, I find it extremely hard. I find that it is a battle to step away. It always has been, and I think it always will be. But knowing that is kind of like being an addict who knows that they have a trigger and being aware of it. And when they feel the thing, for me, it's more about being aware of the people around me. And when I'm losing contact with my loved ones emotionally, I can be around them physically, but I'm withdrawn, I'm completely gone. And forcing myself to be more present. I would say that mindfulness really, really helps. Meditating, going for hikes, physical activity of any kind, I think is really, really helpful for getting yourself to step away from the zone. And I know, the joke is like, a lot of artists, it's like, well, we sit at the table and we draw all day, so we're all out of shape. One, I'm a huge advocate of maintaining your physical health just so that you can keep making art. But 2 is the psychological and spiritual benefits that come with getting your body in motion. And it doesn't have to be anything harder than going for an hour-long walk every day, or even a 30-minute walk every day. If you hate going to the gym, if you hate working out, if you hate lifting weights, you don't want to do yoga, go for a walk every day. Just doing that alone will make your life better. You could be going for a walk every day while listening to me talking on this. You can just have it on your headphones, and maybe you don't get to see what I'm drawing. Like, I listen to the Artcasters all the time, and I mean, they don't draw as much during the stream anymore. They tend more to be talking with just talking with the people they're interviewing. But I just will have the guys in my ears while I'm walking and just listen to them while I do that. Same with all the different podcasts and audiobooks that I consume. So, yeah. Connect with your loved ones and get exercise. That's my answer. But yeah, it is always hard. It's not even a matter of when like Jim's question specifically, is it hard to step away when you're in the zone? For me, it doesn't really matter whether I'm in the zone or out of the zone. It's hard to step away because when I'm not in the zone, I'm actively trying to get into the zone. And that process is just as all-encompassing as being in the zone in my opinion. Let's see here. All right. Let's see here. Let's see here. Red is saying hi to everybody in the chat. And he says, I don't remember you guys, but I know Jim, though. Let's see here. Herman says, your name, Dylan, Jet Jaeger. Oh, the character name. He says, oh, yeah, Jaguar for your robot names. He says, that's Taken, or Slimbot. That rocks. Yeah, there's a lot of cool. This is something that I am trying to bring into my writing craft, because my writing is not as developed as my artwork. But naming any act of writing, which I consider naming characters, is part of the writing process. But any writing, I try to think of it the same way that I think of thumbnailing. So treat the act of coming up with names as if you're just sketching in a sketchbook. That's why I mentioned the idea of just creating lists and just jotting down a bunch of names and seeing what strikes you, what comes to you. The idea of simply, throwing those names down and seeing where it comes, thinking of it like sketching. That's what you want. You want it to be like word sketching. All right. I taped this so it would stay in place while I draw, but I feel like I need to move this around some so I can get the angles I want. Let's see here. Blah, 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 blah. Let's see. You guys are talking names. I'm gonna pass over that because it's fun, but let me jump to more. So yeah, James says I go for walks regularly. I have not watched the latest episode of the Artcasters. Dylan says RIP to Corey being a regular host. I did not know that. I need to go back and catch that latest episode. I hope that it is simply that Corey has to just manage in terms of managing life, and that it's just a matter of taking care of what he needs to take care of. But I am sorry to hear that. That said, I know that the guys always stay in touch with the people that have been in their circle. I know Kevin Cross has come back. Every year or two they'll get Kevin to come in and sit in on an episode. Knowing Corey, I'm sure he will never be far from the fold. But yeah, good shout. So, well, that's what I get for not watching every single episode the week it comes out. A lot of times I will miss episodes for like a couple of months at a time. Then I'll just go through and cherry pick the ones with topics that sound interesting to me. So I apologize for not catching. I'm definitely an Artcaster stan, but I don't catch every single one. But speaking of the Artcasters, it's like now it's turning into an Artcasters spin-off cast because Gary's here. Good to see you, Gary. Good afternoon. And Jim, of course, was here from the jump. And he says, Corey, if that was his real name, if that is a fine American treasure, just as cool in person. Yes, cosign. Let's see here. Gary says, the doctor is in. Jim says, insane. Oh, God. Love having you guys hanging out here. Let's see here. All right. Dylan says, I only have 2 robots at the moment. Maybe need 5 more just in case. I have roughly 4 kaiju so far. Who knows? It might be an interesting story if you've just got 2 robots that are outnumbered by the kaijus. Ask yourself how few characters, because this is something that I've found really helps me with writing in general. You may think, oh, I should have a team. So we're going to have a team of 4 against 4 and everything should be equal. Sometimes I ask myself, what is the fewest characters? All of the characters, heroes, villains, supporting cast. What is the fewest number of characters I can get away with? Sometimes that means taking some characters and combining them into one, giving personality traits from one character to another. But I find that having the fewest working pieces in the puzzle as possible makes for a stronger story. That doesn't mean that a story can't have an expansive, wide cast, but I feel like it really helps for me in terms of having as few as possible. Let's see here. Ooh, James says drew blood when pulling a drill bit out for a home improvement project. Oh, sorry to hear that. That sounds painful and sucky. So sorry to hear it. He says, been thinking about David Lynch a lot lately. I mean, as long as we're on the RIP topics, yeah. I mean, I was bummed out to hear that. I didn't even know that he was ill. And yeah, he's one of those guys, like, even from the early days, like Dune was one of the, for as many people that bitched about his version of Dune, I loved that movie, and I watched it over and over again. I can't necessarily say that it stands up historically, but well, actually, that's not true. I will say that I still love David Lynch's Dune. I have rewatched it, and while people may be critical of it, and David Lynch himself was critical of it and said he just didn't think he was the right person for that. I still love his Dune film. And I'm not saying it's better than the Denis Villeneuve version, because I thought that one was great as well, both part 1 and part 2. But it doesn't have to be an either or. I mean, sometimes people make remakes, and you're like, why did they even bother? Sometimes you make remakes and they're better than the original, but sometimes they're just two different versions that can stand side by side and have different qualities. But yeah, David Lynch will be sorely missed. Maybe I should have done a David Lynch tribute piece. In fact, as I'm sitting here sketching this, I wish for this stream I had done David Lynch in a still suit. I may draw that. I might draw that. That might be what we'll do next week. Because now that I have the image in my head, I can't unsee it. So next week, maybe David Lynch in a still suit. We'll see. All right, let me just barrel through the last few comments here, because we're past an hour, and I think we're going to wind up the stream. If you've got any last questions that you want to hit me with, now's the time, because when I get to the bottom of the chat, I think we're going to wrap it. So Herman says, I never thought I would be good at creating kaijus. Maybe I could do some character concepts. It seems like it's hard creating creatures like that. Have to be very inventive, like the old Godzilla pics. Well, there's a amazing creature designer named Terrell Whitlatch. I'm pretty sure she worked on some of the Avatar films, but she's been a creature designer for decades. I think she also does a lot of just scientific illustration of animals for scientific magazines. But she knows a tremendous amount about actual biology. When it comes to creature design, I watched an interview / kind of demo lecture with her, and it's not necessarily that you're making up creatures out of nothing. When it comes to creature design, the idea is starting with something that's based on reality. Maybe it's octopuses, maybe it's a certain insect, different types of creatures, and that sort of thing. And then just saying, well, how do I want to distort this? Maybe starting with a bug, maybe starting with a lion or a tiger or something, and then adding elements of other creatures, other animals. Maybe it's not just really making them human. Maybe it's combining a lizard with a wolf and seeing what you get. So, but that's if you're interested in creature design. Because that's the other thing. I go back and forth, because I feel like on one hand, as an illustrator, it is kind of upon us, like part of our duty is to learn how to have as varied a skill set as possible in terms of being able to draw a variety of things well. But at the same time, I also feel like you kind of have to lean into what are your interests, because you can spend forever trying to draw and improve your craft, but you're going to lose steam and lose interest if you're drawing stuff that everything feels like a hassle and a chore. So it's finding that balance between your passions that excite you and knowledge, and just trying to get better. So let's see here. Dylan says, at this stage, I'm unsure if I want to include humans in the story as the main center. Well, it sounds like your story's evolving. And at this point, just keep putting stuff out until it comes together in a form that you feel actually is manageable. So it sounds like it's too soon for you to really start editing. At a certain, there is a point at which you have to say, all right, I need to nail this story down. Right now, just throw everything in with the kitchen sink. Just take all of your ideas, pile them in, and then sort out the ones that create a strong narrative spine, that something that's compelling that you actually want to follow. And Dylan says, I haven't seen any of David Lynch's works. If I were going to tell you which one to start with, I mean, Twin Peaks is long, and it's not to everyone's taste. It's very weird. I mean, he's known for being kind of esoteric and weird. If I were going to tell you, Blue Velvet is probably I would say the best starting point for David Lynch. I think it is one of his most accessible films, but still has a lot of the characteristic surrealism that his work is known for. So I would start with Blue Velvet, see if you like it. It's a dark crime story, but if you enjoy it, then from there, just kind of see where his work leads you. Just kind of sample a bit of everything. Let's see. And Jim says, last question. When do you want to hang out, man? Dude, let me know what night you usually do live streams, and we'll sit down. We'll do I'll hop on your stream or you hop on mine. I'll message you off, off of the, offline. I'll get a hold of you. But possibly this coming week. If not, because I also have a Patreon live stream on Thursday this week, which I was going to mention. By the way, if you're still on here, hit the like button. If there's somebody who would enjoy these live streams, hit the share button. I always wait till the end of the stream to mention that. I should mention that earlier now. But anyway, I do have a Patreon live stream on Thursday. So if Thursday nights are good for you, then we can do not this week, but the following week. Otherwise, we'll figure out a time and we'll hop on and just sketch and chat and just BS. We can, and like I said, I'm fine with doing it on your stream. I'm fine with hosting it, but we'll talk and just figure out what works well for you. And if you mean when are we going to hang out in person, next time I'm in LA, I'll hit you up. It's been a while now that we've got out of the hellfires. I shouldn't joke at all. It's not funny. It's goddamn tragic, but we'll figure something out, both for hanging out online and hanging out in person. So Dylan mentions, did you hear that in the Snyder subreddit, Reddit, someone said RIP to Lynch, but then said Snyder was as good, if not better than him. Everyone was angry at him and the post got deleted. I did not hear that. I have a Reddit account and I look up stuff, but I mean, I got to tell you, I got better things to do with my life than follow what people are talking about other creators. I mean, I'm not into that who's talking smack about who and who is saying this person's as good as that person. If that entertains you, then fine, follow that. But honestly, I just feel like it doesn't add to my life. It's not stuff that I'm particularly interested in. Like, I have a bunch of creators I'm a fan of. And I have some in my mind mentally are better than others, but I don't really feel like, I'm not interested in hearing other people's rankings. I'm not interested in arguing with people about their rankings versus my rankings. I feel like if someone thinks that McG is I kind of throw some shade just by saying McG, but if some people feel that McG is not Citizen Kane, but if someone feels that he is the Orson Welles of our modern day, that's their taste. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me whether they agree with my list or I agree with their list. So when you bring up that thing, it just sounds like high school gossip to me. Like, I don't care. I'm not saying that to belittle you bringing it up in the comment, but my reaction to all of that stuff is that, does it make any of us better creators having an argument about whether not Scott Snyder, whether the film director, my brain is not working. But anyway, I do think he's a good director. I think that he probably needs to work with better screenwriters or listen to his screenwriters' opinions. But in the end, all of those criticisms of him, you know, he has made some really, really good films. The point is, I'm not that interested in criticism only because having made things and knowing how many things in my books I would change, or things that are just not good because I'm not good enough at those things, I find it hard to take other creators to task. I believe that criticism should always be constructive, as opposed to just simply saying someone is good or bad. So I don't know. Dylan says one kaiju is based off of a mushroom. Two is based on plants. One is Biolante, and one is a sunflower T-Rex. One is an octopus. Okay, well, hell, you can just name them off of different breeds of octopus. The fact that you have this sense of what they are based on, or that right there gives you a naming convention. So here, Herman says, I think I'm more of a conceptual designer than a straight up illustrator, like for comics. I don't know. Well, it's oh, Gary says the easiest Lynch to take on is Elephant Man. Blue Velvet is next. You know what's funny? I only saw Elephant Man when it was on VHS as a child. That is something I need to go back and rewatch. I have not seen it at all in my adult life. But I definitely need to go back and rewatch Elephant Man. I've seen Eraserhead, but I've only seen it once. And I saw it just for the sake of the weirdness. And it was super weird. I mean, it felt like watching Charlie Chaplin have a nightmare. It felt like Charlie Chaplin having a Franz Kafka nightmare. But it was interesting. That's the thing about Lynch. A lot of his movies, not all of them are quote unquote entertaining, but all of them are interesting. But yeah, I would also like I said, I think Gary's got a better handle on Lynch's oeuvre than I do. So I would definitely take that Elephant Man recommendation. I mean, I liked Mulholland Drive. I liked Lost. Honestly, Lost Highway is one of those where it's a super dreamlike weird movie. But I don't know. I don't know if it was just the fact that the soundtrack. I don't know if it was the fact that I saw it while I was in college. There's something about Lost Highway that I dig. Like, I recognize how disjointed it can feel to someone who's used to conventional narratives, but I also still enjoyed it. Herman says, didn't Lynch make the TV show Twin Peaks? Yes, he did. And I have only seen the original series. I didn't see the remake, and I never completed the original series. So the whole Fire Walk with Me, never seen it. I never saw enough of the show to make it intriguing to me to go see Fire Walk with Me. Although I wonder how interesting it would be to watch that without having watched all of the other Twin Peaks stuff, because his work is so dreamy that it might not even matter whether I have the context of all of the other stuff that happened in the show. And yeah, Herman says, back to the Reddit thing. He says, yeah, fans get crazy, man. James say Redditor is going to Reddit. Dylan says, I heard the Snyder subreddit thing from a YouTube video. So yes, it's lol. Let's see here. Yeah, and he says, yeah, I know you didn't mean it like that. Yeah, well, I appreciate that, Dylan. Herman says, we live in a time where people are easily offended, but at the same time won't right the wrongs of society in their face. So that's why I don't pay attention to what people say half the time. Jim says, for Lynch, just jump right in. Lost Highway. Yeah, Lost Highway is kind of a crazy, like, that's mainlining that's like prime Lynch. I don't know. I mean, I feel almost like you do need a little bit of conventional Lynch, like the Blue Velvet and Elephant Man. You know what? I've never seen the Straight Story, and I've heard great things about that. Like people said that's a really sweet, straightforward. No, it's not a crime story, just a like probably in terms of palatable. They've said it's one of the most palatable Lynch films ever made, and I have never seen that as well. But back to, I do feel like I want to mention, just because I think Herman said something very thoughtful there, and I didn't want to just breeze over it and move by. So coming back to that, he said that's why I don't pay attention to what people say half the time. Yeah, it feels like we argue about how social media is both distracting and also fanning disinformation and fanning aggression and dissent among each other as a society, as a planet, as a species. And I feel like social media and the internet itself, they are merely tools. They're neither good nor bad. But I feel like humanity is wasting a golden opportunity. I know for a lot of us old heads, at the era in which the internet became kind of mainstream, so like early 2000s, web 1.0, like once we got out of dial-up era, I really feel like there was a period where it did feel like, wow, we have this open forum for an exchange in ideas. And it really was a chance for us to, as a species, come closer to each other, to share our life experiences and develop empathy for each other. And I think it saddens me that we have let that slip away. We've let it become commoditized and corporatized, and that we are not using it as a tool for spreading empathy. That, I think, more than anything, I mean, now people feel like it's kind of a burn it all down, or I just need to log off and not use it at all anymore, or it just becomes totalitarian. And I feel like an empathy network is worth fighting for. I don't know how to implement it, but really strongly, like the same way that algorithms have figured out that negative posts and provocative material drive clicks. And I don't know how we can't somehow try to shift that into empathy. That's what I wanted. I want an empathy algorithm. Somebody please build an empathy algorithm and spread it across the internet. Empathy won't stop all wars. It won't stop violence. It won't stop people from being horrible towards each other. But I think that it will. It's hippie-ish to say, but the more love there is in the world, the less violence there's going to be. I don't know. I don't think it's possible to completely eliminate it, because the human condition and our instincts as creatures, there's so much violence in it. But I think tempering that with love can at least make us kind of like the bonobo chimps, where we just would rather spend our days just kind of like pleasuring each other and making each other happy than going around and trying to bash each other's skulls in. All right. That's my soapbox right there. Okay, that's a good point. Gary says, I don't think I could watch Eraserhead again. He says, it's amazing, but unsettling. Yes, very much. Ooh, James says Wild at Heart may be a good starting point too. That's right. Yes. Wild at Heart, even though I've seen Eraserhead and I've seen Blue Velvet, Wild at Heart was the first David Lynch movie I've ever seen. And I would say those three. So I would say if you're going to look at a place to start with Lynch, it would either be Elephant Man, Blue Velvet, or Wild at Heart. Those would be my three. That's my David Lynch starter pack. So very good point. Herman says, that's why I only talk on YouTube. Other social media, it's sad and whack, but you have to take the good with the bad, I suppose. Yeah, unfortunately. I'd hope that we can, the types of conversations that we're having here, I hope that I try to have those, bring that same tenor to any conversation I have on any platform. And hopefully more people will just continue to communicate with each other. It's not about fighting. It's not about converting. It's just communicating. I mean, I think the world would be worse if everyone had a group think and we all thought the same way and had the same belief systems and the same values. I think the world is better for the variety of it. It's simply the fact that that variety and that difference is always weaponized against us as a whole, and that we're turning it into a source of conflict. Dylan says the guy who created the internet pop-up has officially apologized. The pop-ups are extremely annoying. Word. Dylan, IMFAO, which that's an acronym. I'll look it up later. That's one that I don't know. And Herman says, or I just fade away and don't argue with people that say the sky is orange when it's that day. Just leave that there. Yeah, I feel you on that one. All right. He says, appreciate y'all, fellow artists, people. Y'all take care. See you in the next stream. All right, guys. So that's it. We've made it through the comments. And like I said, I think, about as far with this as I can in terms of just blocking in the figure. And I don't know, maybe I can bring the lights closer. It's not that this is super dark. It's just the light is not blasted the way my old drawing table is. But I do wish that this was a little bit lighter. Maybe I need to turn my overhead lights on more so you guys can get more light on my drawing board. But yeah, I didn't even get it. There's no point of this in which you can actually even feel like it's Storm. And this could be Spider-Gwen for all you guys know. But anyways, still experimenting with what works for this this setup in my studio. For now, let's flip back to the big cam. And let me shut off these little lights here. So you guys are, now you're getting to see. Yeah, I've got this set up. Camera's right down there, put it at the board. And I can take this whole monstrosity. And so if you people are wondering, like, you're not sure how to live stream and show your artwork, so it's a drawing board, a couple of lights clamped to it, and a camera on a movable arm that's clamped to it. And that's my current setup. I used to have everything clamped to a large drafting table, but since I no longer have that drafting table, I had to figure something else out. Anyway, on that note, let's see here. If you enjoy these live streams, if you'd like to get additional bonus live streams twice a month, as I mentioned, this Thursday, we're doing another one. I call them art book study groups, where we do deep dives into some of the best art books around, try to suck out all the knowledge we can. Although last week I spent time working on the dryer machine illustration because I just have not had time. So let me just steal some time from that and draw there. But the nice thing about the Patreon live streams is that we have the Discord channel open. So as opposed to typing in the chat, you can just log into Discord, log into the voice channel, and then just talk. And because it's a smaller private group, sometimes it's just me by myself drawing. Sometimes a couple of people will be in, and we can actually just have a conversation while we draw. You may ask for some feedback, throw a piece of artwork up on the Discord server, and I can pull it in. So it's nice. It's much more of an intimate conversational experience. So it's even more of us talking and chatting in real time as opposed to just the typing back and forth. But we do that twice a month. We've got one coming up this Thursday, 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So this Thursday, and as little as $2 a month gets you in. There's higher tiers for higher rewards, but you can log on to that, and we can, and hopefully I'll see you this Thursday. All right. Anyway, that's patreon.com/Jeremy. It's patreon.com/GERIMI. If you'd like to get free digital sketchbooks, work in progress animated GIFs delivered right to your inbox, blog posts about what I'm reading, what I'm watching, what's inspiring me creatively, you can sign up for my free monthly newsletter at substack.com/@Jeremy. I recently moved over, so my newsletter's on Substack now. So you guys can head on over there and sign up. And yeah, we'll see you there. And if you'd like to purchase physical copies of my comics, or if you read digitally on Kindle, go to amazon.jeremy.net. They'll forward you to an Amazon author page. You can pick up books like Eye of the Gods. It's my first graphic novel. I'm the artist, writer, penciler, inker, letterer. I basically did everything but run it through the printing press. You can pick up my most recent project, Morning Star. So it is a retelling of Lucifer's fall from heaven as a Western. It's an 8-issue series. Volume 1 contains issues 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains the conclusion to the series, issues 5 through 8. So both volumes have extensive back matter. There's character designs, thumbnails, page layouts, script excerpts, and more. I basically show you how I put the whole thing together. And for all of these books, if you go to the homepage of my YouTube channel and scroll down to flip throughs, there's book flip throughs of these. So you can see what's inside before you pick them up. All right, guys, that's it for now. I appreciate you guys hanging out, all of the great, thoughtful questions. And thank you for being part of my art journey. That's it for now. Go be creative.